Good morning and welcome to this Now Pensions webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today's session is exclusively for employers who are about to stage or have already staged and are starting to upload their pension details to us. By the end of this webinar, I hope you will understand more about how you set up and maintain your portal following your staging date. We will also be showing you where to find all of your help material that's available to you to help you set up your portal and run your pension scheme with us smoothly. Apologies if you feel this webinar is relatively fast. We are unfortunately restricted to a certain amount of time. However, both the slides and recording of the webinar are available to you afterwards. I am your host for today's session. My name is Jodie Priestley and my role is to help employers such as yourselves with any technical difficulties you may have with the setup and operation of your portal. Here is the agenda for today's session. We will start by going through the employer portal setup, then on to the file upload process, and we'll also refer to the essential support information available to you to assist with smooth implementation. We will also have time for any questions you may have once I have finished the presentation. Please feel free to type and send in your questions. You will see where to do this on the right-hand side of your screen. We will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the session. However, we have a large number of you registered for this webinar today, so we will probably not be able to answer all of them. Our Help Centre on the Now Pensions website, www.nowpensions.com, should be able to help answer any questions you might still have after the session today. Failing that, you will also be able to contact our client support team for any questions you still require answering. Today we will be covering the main tasks that need to be completed by you to enable you to upload data to Now Pensions. The main focus of the presentation will be the setup and use of the Now Pensions employer portal. However, I will also cover some important points with regards to the configuration of your payroll systems. It is essential that you complete these tasks to enable you to successfully transfer your data to Now Pensions. The key to the scheme running smoothly is the quality of the data that is provided to Now Pensions. As all of the scheme data will be produced directly from your payroll system, it is essential that you have contacted your payroll provider in advance of your staging date. Now Pensions already deal with a large number of payroll providers. You will need to check whether your payroll provider can produce the Now Pensions data file. If not, you may need to work with them to ensure the data can be produced in the correct format. Now Pensions will be happy to support this process with both you and your payroll provider. You will also need to check whether your payroll system can carry out all auto-enrollment functionality, as often they will require an upgrade or some development to ensure the payroll system can carry out the key tasks, such as assessment, postponement, enrollment, contributions, deductions, opt-ins, opt-outs, and re-enrollment. You will also need to enter the following information into your payroll system. Employer code. This is provided by Now Pensions and is unique to each client. Pay codes. For those of you that have signed up with Now Pensions after the 31st of July 2015, your payroll codes will have been created through the online sign-up. Any additional payrolls that need to be added will need to be created directly in your employer portal. For those of you that have signed up prior to the 31st of July 2015, you will need to create all pay codes in your employer portal. But don't worry, we'll be running through how to do this shortly in the presentation. Once you have created your pay codes, these need to be input into your payroll system so that when you produce the data files, the relevant codes are displayed in the correct column of the file. Please remember that Now Pensions run an occupational pension scheme and contributions are deducted from gross salary. After you've signed up with Now Pensions, you will receive 2 emails from us with regards to the implementation of your scheme. The first email, which is a payroll helper email, confirms the login details for your portal and contains a link to the Now Pensions online help centre that will guide you through the tasks that need to be completed to enable you to get your pension plan up and running. There are 6 initial steps, which are initial setup of the employer portal, which we will cover in this webinar, setting up the direct debit for payments. All payments are collected by direct debit, preparing your payroll data. Data quality is key to the scheme running smoothly, so we have provided a validation tool for you to check the accuracy of your data before uploading employee data to the live system. Uploading payroll data, which we will cover in this webinar. Making payments for scheme members, which highlights contributions are to be paid from gross pay. Keeping the portal up to date. This covers ongoing maintenance of the portal and employee data. The Now Pensions Help Centre also contains online guidance and a number of documents that you can download to assist with the running of your scheme. The second email will contain a link to your unique Now Pensions portal. These emails are sent to the payroll contact provided during the application process. In my previous slide, I mentioned the link to the Now Pensions Help Centre that is provided in the payroll helper email that was sent to you. The link contains the following guidance documents. Your files explained. This covers a number of different scenarios and confirms how the data should be displayed in the file given that scenario. So for example, if you are using postponement, it will guide you to what columns need to be completed and how to ensure the relevant communications are issued. Common errors and warnings. When you're uploading your data files to your Now Pensions portal, the system carries out a number of validation checks on this data. These checks can lead to data errors being highlighted, which need to be resolved. This document confirms how to fix these errors. A guide to setting up your microsite. This is a user manual for your employer portal. A guide to generic input file, payroll to Now Pensions. This confirms the file format for the data file that is to be produced from your payroll. This document should be sent to your payroll provider so they can confirm that the data can in fact be produced in the correct format. Direct debit instruction. All contributions are to be collected by direct debit, so you need to return the completed form to Now Pensions if you have not already completed a form as part of your online sign-up. Whilst I'm talking about direct debits, I would like to highlight the fact that we do not collect contributions for employees who are in their opt-out period. We will collect those contributions submitted in this period if they have an opt-out and their opt-out period is over. We will now have a look at the Now Pensions portal, and in particular, the initial setup and use of this portal. Once you have successfully logged in, and on your first visit to your site, you need to verify your company details. To do this, you need to access the company details option that is located on the left-hand side of the homepage. The data populated on this page is provided during the application process. You should check the data on this page, make any necessary changes, and input your TPR reference number, as we do not request this information during the application stage. If you are not aware of your TPR number, you can contact the pensions regulator and they will be able to provide you with this information. Now Pensions have recently released some new functionality with regards to the way the employee communications are issued. If you have provided an email address for an employee, all communications will be sent by email to them at no cost. If no email address has been provided for an employee, you can elect to receive their communications as a PDF, which will be emailed to a central mailbox of your choosing. So you can then forward the communications onto the employee yourself. If you would like to use this method of delivery for employees where no email address has been provided, you will need to complete the relevant fields in the company details section of the portal. This will ensure that no costs are incurred for the issuing of employee communications. Remember, it is your responsibility to make sure the PDFs are sent on to the relevant employee. The other option is that the communications for employees where no email address has been provided are issued by post, which will incur postage charges for you, the employer. You may also want to set up additional users on the site. This can only be done by the owner of the site. The site owner is the person who logged in first. An example, the individual who received the 2 setup emails. From the home screen, you should then select the admin login option. You then need to enter the new user's email address and create a password for them. The owner then needs to enter their password to authorize the setup of the new user. All new users should be created with an employer access, and when the new user logs in for the first time, they will be prompted to change their password to an entirely new one. The next area that I would like to cover is setting up payroll details within your employer portal. This is the most important task that you will need to complete during the setup of the portal. The information added here is used to validate the files that are uploaded for each pay period. For those of you that have signed up with Now Pensions after the 31st of July 2015, the structure of your payrolls will already have been created for you and can be seen in the payroll section, which can be found under the reference data heading on the home page. If your portal does not contain your payroll structure details, or you need to add any further payrolls to your site, you will need to click on the green Add button. If you need to create your payroll structure, then you will be required to enter the following information for each payroll that you run. You should create a unique 4-digit pay code for each payroll that you run. This allows you to identify one payroll file from another. Your 4-digit pay code is an alphanumeric code in the format P00X. If you need to add a payroll, then set the pay code to the next number in the sequence. An example, P001 would be followed by P002, P003, P004, and so on and so forth for each additional payroll. You should then select pay frequency from the drop-down menu. This is monthly, weekly, fortnightly, etc. Your company code can only be your 4-digit ER code, and this will be pre-populated for you already. Commonly known as field is the name you give for your payroll to help you identify it. It could be temp for temporary staff or perm for permanent staff. It's up to you. Once you have entered this information, you will need to click on Save to create that pay code. You will need to repeat this process until you have set up all of your pay codes for all of the payrolls that you run. Once pay codes have been created for all of the payrolls that you run, this information needs to be added to your payroll system by you so that it is mirrored in the files that are produced. The next step is to create a payroll timetable for each pay code, and to do this you will need to click on the green Add button under the payroll details section of each and every individual pay code. To populate the payroll timetable, you will need to enter the following details. Pay period. Now this is the tax week or month for that specific pay period. Processing date. This is the last date you would expect to upload a file for any given pay period. If a file has been uploaded, it is also the date the system will lock that pay period and process the data. No changes will be allowed to the data once the pay period has been locked. Pay period start date. This is the date the pay period commenced, and this should replicate the date that you will be entered in the files that are produced from your payroll system and uploaded. We will look at the file in more detail later on. Processed. This should always be set to no and never manually change to yes. It's an automated process when the pay periods are locked, and it will change to yes itself. If it's manually changed, the system won't pick up the data and it could delay your direct debit collection and cause late payment of contributions. Process date. These should be left blank. This is also an automated process and will change once the pay period has been locked. Pay date. This is the date the employee is actually paid. Pay year. To enable us to identify which tax year the pay period relates to, please enter the starting year of the tax year in this field. For example, the pay year for any pay period in the 2015/2016 tax year would be 2015. You then need to click on Save to create that pay period. To add a further pay period, click Payroll Details List and run through the process above for the next pay period. The process that I have just discussed is obviously fairly time-consuming, which is why we have released a bulk upload facility for the payroll details. The bulk upload facility allows you to create multiple pay periods in one go. Guidance on how to create and upload the payroll timetable can be found on the Now Pensions Help Centre. We have also included a template of the spreadsheet that should be used to upload the data. It is a simple process to create the spreadsheet and upload the information to the site. However, if at any time you require any assistance, the Now Pensions client support team are on hand to help. Whether you are manually creating pay periods or using the bulk upload facility, we would suggest that you have a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 12 months worth of future pay periods set up at any one time. The slide on the screen at the moment shows what a complete payroll list would look like. There is a couple of points to note. The fourth column along, which is titled Processed, would turn to yes once the data has been processed for each pay period. A date would also be entered in the process date column. This allows you to track when pay periods have been processed and the date of which they have been processed. You can also amend or delete the payroll details once they have been set up. However, please note that a processed pay period should never be deleted or amended. We will now look at the CSV file that you will be uploading. Your payroll system will produce this file, and I would encourage you to make any changes to the data on the file through your payroll system and not by changing and saving the file itself, as this can corrupt the file and lead to problems such as duplicated employee records. Now, the CSV file drives everything. The direct debit collection, issuing the communications, changes to employees' details, they are all driven through the CSV file. So it is important that you're able to check the data on the file, even though you should only be changing data via your payroll system. Information on the correct format and the mandatory fields can be found in the Interface Specification Guide, which is located on the Help Centre. However, we will now briefly go through the columns in the file and explain exactly what they're used for. The first 6 columns are fairly self-explanatory. They are forenames, surnames, national insurance number, and start date of employment. The NINO, national insurance number, has to be in the correct format, or this will cause an error in the upload. All dates in the CSV file should be in the format you can see on the slide now. The start date of employment should always be before the enrolment date in the scheme. If it's not, it will cause delays in the direct debit collection and you will not receive an error report when uploading to highlight this. Title can be one of a number of options that you can see in the interface specification document. The next 6 columns are date of birth, sex, payroll number, pay period start date, pay period, and pay frequency. Date of birth and sex are self-explanatory. Payroll number is provided by your payroll software. An employee's payroll number should never change unless they leave your employment and return. This is a unique identifier for each employee on our system. The pay start date and pay period should match exactly what is set up on your payrolls on the portal. If they do not match exactly, it can cause problems with direct debit collections and communications. The pay frequency will match the payroll that you are uploading for, an example, monthly, weekly, fortnightly, etc. Columns M, N, and O are three of the most important columns on the CSV file, as they drive enrollments, postponements, and communications. The enrollment date should only be completed for eligible job holders. This will drive the enrollment notices to be issued and the eligible job holders to be enrolled into the scheme. After a member is enrolled, this column doesn't have to be completed for them again unless they are being re-enrolled into the scheme. This column should be left blank for entitled and non-eligible job holders. This will ensure that an assessment notice is correctly issued for these employees. The postponement date column should be completed if you are using postponement. It should be the last date of postponement that is entered, i.e. the day before enrollment date. Just because you are in postponement does not mean that you do not have to upload or do anything until your enrollment date. To be compliant, you have to issue postponement notices within 6 weeks of your staging date. Uploading the CSV file with the postponement dates will do this for you. You should never upload a file with both these columns completed. It should be one or the other or none at all. The assessment column should be completed for all employees on each file that is submitted. Once the employee has been enrolled, their assessment status should not change. Columns P to V are the contact details for the employees. The address columns are self-explanatory. The postcode should be in the correct format or this will cause an error with the upload. I would encourage you to complete an email address for as many employees as possible. If this is completed, all communications will be sent by email at no cost. As discussed earlier, if they're not sent by email, we will be able to send a PDF of the communication to an email address that you specify in the company details section of the portal, and you can then forward the PDFs to the employee yourself and still avoid postage costs. This was previously spoken about on slide 8. The other option is that the communications are issued by post, which will incur postage charges for you, the employer. The next 4 columns are to do with contribution amounts. They are salary sacrifice, employee contributions, employer contributions, and AVCs. Your staff will be N for no by default for salary sacrifice. If you have given the option for your employees to participate in a salary sacrifice scheme and they have elected to do so, this column should have a Y for yes. EE-cons is the employee contribution whole amount. Employer cons is the employer contribution amount. If any of your staff have decided to pay more, you will have to populate the percentage in your payroll software, and the additional amount will be an AVC, which stands for Additional Voluntary Contribution. You will have to check the generic output file before every upload to check for AVCs, and then enter this on your payroll software. But don't worry, we'll look at the generic output file a bit later on. It's these columns here that decide how much we'll be collecting by direct debit from you. We will only collect the amounts you upload, so it is absolutely vital that you check the amounts to ensure that the contributions are correct before you import the file to us. After we have collected and in turn invested the contributions, it's very difficult to make alterations. Just a note, you should never have contribution amounts if you are still in postponement. The next 6 columns are opt-ins, opt-outs, gross pay, exit date, employee contribution percentage, and employer contribution percentage. If any of your staff have opted out or in since your last payroll, you will have to update your payroll software accordingly, and these dates will be populated. You can find the opt-in and opt-out information for the employees from the generic output file, which we'll look into in a moment. Gross pay will be your employee's gross pay for that specific pay period. If you have any leavers, the exit date will have to be populated. Once a member is exited, you won't be able to upload any new information and their pension will be frozen. If they return, they will have to be given a new employee number and a new record will be created. Employee and employer contribution percentage will depend on the scheme that you have chosen. The last four columns on the CSV file are pay code, ER code, scheme code, and pensionable earnings. Pay code should be the payroll code that you are uploading for. This is the one that you created on the portal earlier. ER code is your 4-digit company code that you have been allocated. You should keep a note of this as it also forms part of your security check when contacting us, and we will be unable to help you without it. Scheme code, now this depends on what schemes you have set up for your employees and will either be 101, 102, 103, 104 or 105 depending on what scheme you have placed them in. Pensionable earnings. Now this is your employees' pensionable earnings for that specific pay period, and please note that this may differ from their gross pay. Once the payroll details have been set up, you can start uploading data to Now Pensions. Data should not be uploaded until you have staged. Otherwise, communications could be issued at the wrong time. If you would like to test your file before staging, you should run the file through our validation tool, the link to which is included on the Now Pensions Help Centre. To upload the files, you need to select the Import Data option from the homepage. You then need to select the appropriate file name from the Import Name drop-down box. For the majority of clients, this will be the generic input file, unless Now Pensions have specifically said otherwise. Selecting the incorrect name can cause duplicated records which will have to be corrected before you can continue. You should then locate the file that you have produced from your payroll system. Enter the email address that you want any data error notifications to be sent to and click on Import Data. One point to note is that if you would like to use the payroll detailed bulk upload facility we spoke about earlier, you would also come to this part of the system, and instead you would change the import name to Payroll Details option. Once the file is being uploaded, you will see a Progress So Far bar. At this time, the file is being uploaded, the system is processing the data, the database is being updated, and communications will then be prepared for issue if applicable. The time taken to process the file will depend on how large the file is and how many changes or new employees are on each file. At the end of the upload, you will receive a notification on screen of the number of records imported into the database. The current screen confirms that all of the records have been successfully imported into the database, so no further action would be required by you until you run your next payroll. However, there will be occasions when some of the records that have been imported have been rejected, and therefore you will need to resolve these data errors immediately. The slide on the screen shows that there are 6 data errors that need to be resolved. To fix these data errors, you need to access the error file. And to do this, you need to click on the CSV button next to the error log heading. This will then download the relevant error file. If you have navigated off the previous page, you are able to access the error report by going to the Import Data section and clicking Progress Report. You will also be able to check all of the historical files you have submitted. From the progress report screen, you will need to scroll down until you reach the file that you have just imported. When you reach the required record, you click on the green button that says Open. This will then take you back to the error report, where you can see the errors by clicking on the CSV button next to the error log heading. Please note that error reports will be deleted after 5 working days, and we strongly advise you to mend all errors as soon as they occur. The file that has been downloaded will just contain data for employees where errors have been highlighted. At the end of the spreadsheet, you will find a column entitled Error Found, and this column will include the relevant error message. You will need to resolve the errors for each employee within your payroll system. You will then need to reproduce the entire payroll data file and upload that file using the same process as you did for the initial file upload. The common errors and warning document will assist with this entire process. The document confirms what the error message refers to and, most importantly, how to fix it. By fixing the errors within your payroll system and then re-uploading the complete payroll file again, it will mean that the data within payroll and the Now Pensions portal is identical, and this will prevent further errors occurring. The current slide shows you what our 4 most common errors are. Duplicate email address. This means there is a record on your portal that already has that email address. Now, this may be as simple as a husband and wife using the same email address, but more often than not, it could be due to a leaver who has returned and has the same email address. If this is the case, and you have an employee who left your company and then rejoined, you would need to contact our client support team, and we will be able to remove the email address from their old record so that you are then able to re-import their new one. This error also occurs if you are trying to change the payroll code for an employee. You should never change payroll codes yourself. If an employee changes from one pay code to another, you should always contact us first, and we will be able to change the payroll code for you. This will avoid duplicate records. The next error is the specified combination of company code, payroll code, and pay period was not found. This means that the pay period has not been set up on the portal for that payroll code. You will have to add these as described earlier, ensuring that the pay start on the file matches with the pay period start date on the portal. The third common error is you do not have the rights to update this record. Now, this means that the employee is a leaver and you can no longer update the record. If you have exited the employee in error, please contact us and we can remove the leaving date for you. The fourth is you are trying to upload data for a processed pay period. This means that the pay period has already been processed, and no changes can be made to that pay period except in exceptional circumstances. You will have to add or subtract any erroneous contribution data to your next upload to balance your employee's pension. The final area of the system that I would like to cover today is the report section, which once again can be accessed via the home page. There are currently 2 reports in this section, and they are membership categories, which provides a detailed breakdown of your workforce and their current auto-enrollment status. The generic output file. Now, this provides the opt-in, opt-out, and any additional voluntary contribution request information to you. This file should be downloaded before each payroll run, and any changes within the generic output file need to be added into your payroll before that pay period is closed. A member who has opted out will need to be opted out in payroll. If the member has opted out within their statutory opt-out window, a refund will need to be processed and no further contributions should be taken. Your staff are under no obligation to tell you if they have opted out, opted in, or increased their contributions. So it is absolutely vital that you check the generic output file before you do each payroll and update your payroll software accordingly. The slide on the screen contains an example of what the generic output file looks like. The file is also produced in a CSV format. If your payroll provider has built an upload facility for this report, you can upload the data directly into Payroll. Otherwise, changes will need to be manually made. Column F on the spreadsheet contains opt-in dates. If an opt-in date is confirmed on this report, you will need to opt the member in and start making contributions from the next available pay period. Columns G and H relate to opt-outs. If the date in column G, opt-out date, is before the date in column H, opt-out last day, then the member has opted out within their statutory window and a refund can be processed through Payroll. However, if the date in column G is after the date in column H, the member is not entitled to a refund through your payroll as their opt-out period has elapsed. Column O has the additional voluntary contribution rate for any members who have increased their contribution rates. If they are showing an additional amount in this column, you will have to deduct more money from their wage. We have recently revamped our website. Please register on www.nowpensions.com if you haven't already. This will give you full access to all guides and help material on the online help centre. We've introduced the help centre that contains many frequently asked questions by employers, advisors and employees. This will be the first port of call for all queries coming in to us. The Help Centre will constantly be added to and enriched. Many of your questions coming in today will be added if they are not in there already. Of course, we are continuing to build the number of our client support case handlers, but with the number of schemes we take on likely to increase more than tenfold in 2016, we simply cannot entertain 10 times the amount of calls and emails. So please do have a look at the Help Centre to see if the answer you're looking for can be found there. It is so important that you get your payroll upload files set up exactly right if they are to work first time and not potentially cause knock-on errors and problems down the line. This is an exact science. Single letters missed, commas inserted or omitted will cause the files to fail. So please do have a look at all of the material listed here. A key recent development, which is making a huge positive difference, is the file validation tool, available via the URL link you can see on the slide now. You should all upload a test file to this before you attempt to upload your first file to the live portal. It spots virtually all errors, so potentially saves masses of time and heartache. Now, many thanks for your questions. We will pick out a few to answer.
Thanks, Jodie. Can you manually produce the CSV file if the payroll software does not produce this each month?
Absolutely, that would be the way that you would do it. However, we do advise to run this through your payroll software. As I mentioned, client support are often constantly on hand for you to call and ask questions. It's important to get that first file right. So if you do need to create it yourself, we will be able to assist with it, but we do say that you speak to your payroll software to help with the contributions.
Thanks, Jodie. Another question. Do I not upload any employees' data until I have run my first payroll after my staging date?
Absolutely correct. So you will never have to input employee data onto the portal manually. All of the data that we take is from the files you import. So that first file that you import, which has to be after your first pay run after staging date will automatically put all of your employee data onto our portal.
Thank you very much.
And that's all the questions we seem to have. If you do think of any more anytime, please feel free to give us a call on the number provided there. Thanks very much for listening today. Have a great day. Bye-bye.